Hey everyone, it's Alex, and today I'm here with a book review for The Henna Artist by Alka Joshi. I received this as an art from my workplace, but this book was published about a month ago, and I am just now getting this book review up. This is an adult historical fiction novel about a woman named Lakshmi living in the city of Jaipur in India in the 1950s. Lakshmi is a henna artist. When she was a teenager, she ran away from an abusive arranged marriage and escaped to the city. She first used her artistic talent and herbalist knowledge to work as a henna artist in the pleasure houses, and then she began to move up in society, eventually at the point in this book, acting as a henna artist for the wealthiest of the upper class. She also works as an abortionist for the wealthy, providing herbal teas to those in need. I gave this book 3 stars. There was a lot of interesting things about this book, and I want to talk about those first, because I really did enjoy learning about society. So much of this book centers around the caste system in India. Lakshmi works around the very wealthy, but she herself is more of middle class, and in the caste system, I forget what it was called, but she was in the educator class system, and it's kind of interesting to see how that influenced her interactions with everyone around her, and how in certain ways she could never climb as high as she wanted, because she was a very ambitious character. At the beginning of this book, her younger sister, who she never knew about, comes to find her in the city with Lakshmi's abusive ex-husband, or current husband, because they never actually got divorced. And Lakshmi has to deal with raising this teenage girl who she's never known before, and it's a very interesting relationship there. I also really love to see how Lakshmi's work as an abortionist was handled in the book, and how other people around her saw it, and what they thought of her and what they thought of her work, because I thought it was a really interesting concept to explore. But the things I didn't like about this book so much, I wasn't a fan of the writing. The writing style wasn't bad. There wasn't anything that I could say specifically about it that was like, oh, this is terrible. But it just wasn't very good either. I kind of had an issue reading it, and it was just like, it wasn't contributing anything to the story. Because for me, a really good writing style can kind of overcome some of the flaws of the story, especially if they're small flaws, if they're just like little things I'm noticing. I enjoy it on a whole a lot more when the writing style is like really gorgeous and beautiful and like really well done. In this book, it wasn't bad. It felt like maybe a little bit clunky and just like kind of amateurish. I didn't really enjoy it, and it didn't really do any favors for the book as a whole. Another thing I had an issue with was that the whole book kind of felt very superficial and just like very surface level. And I don't say that meaning that all the topics discussed were shallow topics, because that's not what I mean at all. It feels more that like she didn't give herself the time or the breadth to really delve deeply into all the issues she was discussing. It felt like she was only just scratching the surface of these characters and their lives and their issues and like everything that was going on. She was just barely scratching the surface, and there was so much more that she could have explored. And because of that, I never really felt very invested in these people's lives. I never really cared about these characters the way I really want to when I'm reading a book. And it was a very fast-paced story. And I say this because it takes place over a year, and this book is like a little bit shy of 350 pages, I believe. So you cover that full year in 350 pages, and there's no point where you're really skipping time. It feels like you're skimming this entire year. There's never a point where it's like, well, we delve really deeply into like this week, and then like, oh, nothing really important happens for the next few weeks, so it's kind of like summarized or like quickly skip through until like the next important thing. It's like everything happens like in order at like the same pace over the course of a year, and that's just like not a lot of time for a 350-page book. Like, it's just so much that it feels like there's so much going on, there's too much going on, when really I just wanted her to like slow down and really explore some of these issues that she brought up. It was much too fast-paced for me. But again, I do like books that are particularly slow. That's something that I always really appreciate. So if you're someone who like doesn't mind a very fast-paced book, then you would probably have fewer issues with it than I did. It did feel a little bit superficial because of that, and it didn't give a whole lot of time for character development. I think character development was something that happened off-screen a lot of the time. Especially a good example is Lakshmi's younger sister, Radha. Radha comes from a very small village. She's lived there her whole life. She's been kind of on her own and neglected by her parents for a lot of her life. And when she comes to the city, she's incredibly overwhelmed. She doesn't know what it's like to be in the city. She hero worships her big sister, and she just she's very much a different person than she is, you know, halfway through the book, where she's confident in the city and rebellious against her sister. And it's like, when did that happen? That's not something that you really get to see develop slowly. It's just kind of like, one moment she's something else, and then halfway through the book you realize she's a different character, and there was never a point where you got to see her growth or development. And I really missed out on that. I think that was something that really could have benefited the book, because it wasn't just Radha, it was, you know, all the characters in the book were like this. I just wanted more time to really develop them as people. I also had some issues with Lakshmi's ex-husband. He shows up at the beginning of this book with Radha, and he's kind of supposed to be a changed character in a way, and there is a lot of, like, forgiveness and how he's, like, seen the error of his ways, and now he, like, does his mother's work the way Lakshmi does with being an herbalist and helping women. And it just kind of, I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way because he was physically abusive. That's why Lakshmi ran away from him. And the way it was handled didn't seem to be very well, and I think maybe it could have been handled better in a different book where, like I said, you actually get to see the character development, but because you don't get to see much character development in this, it just kind of, like, happens in the background or off screen or whatever. It did feel very, it made me uncomfortable the way his character was treated, that he was this physically abusive man, and now we're just supposed to believe he's changed, and, like, we don't get to see that change. It's just, like, that's what we're supposed to believe. So I wasn't a huge fan of that, but I don't know. I didn't dislike this book overall. Like, I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. I don't dislike that I read it. Like, I didn't consider it a waste of time. I really enjoyed the cultural aspects of this and learning about Lakshmi's work. That was really the strengths of this book to me. It really felt like Alka Joshi did a lot of research into, like, the history of henna artistry, and that I enjoyed, and the culture I enjoyed. It was just kind of everything else, you know, like the writing and the character development and everything else was really not great for me. But I don't know. I think if you don't mind a faster paced book, if you don't mind a book that's, like, a little bit more casual, because I was really expecting a lot of depth from this, and that's not something it's really going to give you. But if you go in with the right expectations, maybe you would enjoy it more than me. Because, like I said, not a bad book, just not something that I particularly enjoyed, and I will be passing this along at some point. Let me know down below if you've read The Henna Artist and what you thought of it if you have, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all again soon.